Siffredi was the winner of the Mandela Trophy, which was the top project for the Spanish man. Welcome.
Hello. It is my pleasure and honor to stand here today to share my work with you. As you know, the development of elite athletes requires a systematic process entailing a succession of stages and transitions. Youth sport development is a crucial phase of this pathway that usually begins at puberty with performance-oriented training and ends in adulthood. The present project focuses on this phase with the intention of supporting a transition to elite level competition of the athletes selected and trained to represent Argentina in the 3rd Youth Olympic Games, Buenos Aires 2018. The development of this Youth Olympic team represented a sea of change for hundreds of young athletes in about 30 sports. This group of athletes is known as Generation 2018. To foster this athlete's sport career, there was a need to design a project to successfully deal with the demands of elite sport. As this was only perceived later in the process, it represented a serious problem that should have been addressed before the Olympic flame was extinguished in Buenos Aires. Thus, as a starting point to elaborate the project to address this problem, it was necessary to identify key strategies and resources to do so. And so, the research question was conceived. Based on this research question, it is expected that after the implementation of this project, Generation 2018 athletes will achieve at the right time the outcomes I'm now showing. This will constitute one of the most important legacies of Buenos Aires 2018 for Argentine sport. To deepen the comprehension of transitions in sport, I review 126 academic resources conducted by 205 scholars, which allow me to understand that the transitions between the stages of a sport career are part of the pathway in which a very specific group of demands arise as unavoidable prerequisites in order to advance to the next stage. When athletes have the tools to face these challenges, they successfully transition to elite sport. But the majority do not. And this slows down their development, or they drop out prematurely from sports. While countries with large populations can afford to lose talent, less populated countries should more carefully study this critical stage. On the other hand, the aforementioned developmental process requires both talented athletes and a systematic stimulation. In this context, it is important to consider that along this pathway emerges a complex set of relationships involving multiple stakeholders that influence athletes. This set of relationships include the affective domain, the training environment, and the institutional context. The situatedness of an actor in this set of relationships explains his or her relative power. The key stakeholders often have more influence over athletes than those in the margins, where the pressures are less demanding. To achieve the goal of this study, a cross-sectional and descriptive qualitative research was carried out with the use of 2 data collection methods. The analysis I conducted, which was inspired by previous literature, allowed me to identify 3 main things: the increasing demand from one stage based on the precedent, the focus of the strategies, and the profile of the resources that facilitate the transition. Conducting a non-randomized sample of typical cases was decided. I analyzed 2 samples characterized by their expertise. 18 national experts from 14 Olympic sports were interviewed, and I analyzed information from 9 international programs. This methodological process led to some conclusions and identified the strategies and resources that allow the design of a transition process tailored to these junior athletes. After analyzing the results of this research through the triangulation of relevant information obtained through both data collection methods, I was able to understand the transition process and come up with 5 main conclusions. Here is a summary of them. Based on these conclusions, I designed a model that describes how junior athletes deal with the environmental and individual demands in relation to the strategic use of resources. To transition to elite sport, athletes have a set of individual attributes that position them as eligible to be part of a team or participate individually in elite competition. In this process, athletes have familiar and social support that, along with a number of institutional context resources, provide key inputs for the implementation of transitional strategies meant to fulfill the demands of elite sport. Afterward, for the purpose of improving results, it is imperative to enhance their performance with the assistance of appropriate stimulation, facilitated by a number of generic strategies. Based on this model, I designed last year a transition project that articulates 2 stages: the end of junior level and the first steps to elite sport. After presenting it here, it was put in place. It is important to highlight that the transition does not constitute an intermediate phase between these 2 stages. Rather, the task of this project ran parallel to the specific requirements of these different levels, connecting the 2 stages like Lego blocks. In light of this framework, I established the pathway that athletes ought to follow through a series of personal plans, taking into consideration the dynamic balance between the demands and the athlete's personal evolution. The proposed transitional pathway has 3 main stages and 5 specific plans, which start with the candidates' nominations. The nominations should meet 3 requirements. First, athletes should stand out in international competition in their age bracket. Second, it is expected that they will be established in elite sport within 4 years. And third, they have the potential to excel in the next decade. Each nominee is evaluated by a technical committee that determines their admission to the program, differentiating those who, because of their young age, ought to be monitored separately from those who are in a position to start the intervention right away. Those who overcome this step are assessed by the scientific department and interviewed by a project leader. Next, this professional group ought to answer the following diagnostic questions. If any of these questions are answered negatively, there are different plans to address the insufficiency, which were carefully elaborated and explained in my written project from last year. In the event that the answers are positive in the diagnosis or because of the intervention, it means that the athletes have the resources to transition to elite sport. This is when the intervention ends, because the athletes are in a position to continue on the road to elite sport. From the graphic matrix of the Canvas models, there are 6 key tasks for the first year of the project, with an initial budget for 60 athletes in transition and for another 60 being monitored. Moreover, with the goal of producing reliable information to optimize the project and put the results into perspective, the following elements and control mechanism have been planned. Obviously, this is a theoretical model, and the project that has been put in place with this particular group of athletes is only the beginning of an initiative that can be extended to other realities and countries. Sport institutions spend significant resources on training their athletes, not paying enough attention to the Achilles heel that represents sports transitions. I trust that the implementation of this project will accomplish the goals that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. However, the impact that this project could have on the lives of these young athletes is more important than a handful of medals. After all, sports can be a wonderful experience that brings meaning to their lives, because we are passionate about it, because it is part of our history, and because the search for meaning and happiness through their practice is as legitimate and important as any other decision that we make when we wake up in the morning. Thanks to my wife Andrea and my daughter Malene, and also want to thank my memo professor and classmate, the Olympic Solidarity and the Argentine Olympic Committee. Thanks to all of you for your attention and for the aspiration to make sports better and stronger.
Thank you, Mr. Siffredi, for this excellent and very interesting presentation.